One of the benefits of going through hard drives is finding forgotten treasures. Back in 2017, when I was refurbing a 1951 South Bend 10K lathe, I unfortunately was not taking video of the process. For whatever reason, however, when it came time to fabricate some sort of stand for my new old lathe, I decided to roll SD card. I remember doing a lot of research into stands at the time, and the endless options and opinions resulted in analysis paralysis. I had one GoPro and not a lot of forethought, but even back then, I finally got to the point where I figured, let's give it a try. The design and brainstorming for the table, or cart, or whatever you want to call it, was done in SketchUp. My lathe comes in at around 500 pounds, so I needed something strong, rigid, yet movable with a small footprint. The final design is fairly simple, consisting of hot-rolled mild steel and hardware from McMaster-Carr. The legs are made from 2-inch square tube with 1/4-inch walls, and the top lattice is made from 1-inch square tube with 1/8-inch walls. I got the steel from a local place in Maine that delivered, as I had no way of transporting the 24-foot sticks. I used my trusty, crusty Harbor Freight bandsaw to cut the pieces to length. I like to clean up the areas to be welded to remove mill scale and make sure I have a good surface. I got a few of those magnetic welding holders, which were a real lifesaver. At this particular time, I didn't have a welding table, and garage floors are generally not flat to a surprising degree. So you will see me measuring along with using levels and squares, checking, tack welding, then checking some more, trying to get everything as square, plumb, and level as I possibly could. If you're enjoying this video, please strike a like and consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. I took quite a bit of time laying out the parts and making sure I understood how everything fit together. It's easy to make assumptions instead of following the blueprint, which will always lead to trouble. So I would dry fit everything, prep the metal, measure, check again, tack, check again. It was a process because I couldn't trust the floor to be accurate. By the way, I'm sure you've noticed by now the mainejason modesty badge. Rest assured that has been put in place for your protection. Now, I'm not the best welder in the world. In fact, I'm not really even a good welder, but I feel the weld integrity was passable for this application. In order to make things look somewhat presentable, a fair amount of grinding needed to be done. Obviously, eye and ear protection are a must, but I'd also recommend some sort of respirator as well. Later that evening, I blew my nose and I understood why. The big side effect of doing a lot of grinding is that it makes a mess, and all that mess is metal. If you leave it on your driveway, for example, it will rust. So clean things up as you go. In fact, I got one of these things. It's basically a magnet on wheels that you can roll around the area and it picks up the metal, dust, and pieces. I'll leave the link to this as well as the other tools I used in this video in the description below. I felt it was really critical to get this frame as square and plumb as possible. That's why I keep checking. When a weld is made, the heating and cooling pushes and pulls the metal, so you need to keep checking and adjusting until it's locked in, especially when one is an amateur welder. To make plates to mount the caster, I used some mild steel welding coupons that I had lying around. I decided to try my hand at TIG for this. I have a long way to go, but the welds are passable. I measured things up and cut them down to size on the horizontal bandsaw. Then I drilled the holes, first a pilot hole, then full size. My drill press really doesn't run slow enough for drilling metal properly, but enough time, pressure, and drill bits, you can get the job done. I checked for clearance between the caster and the mount for the leveling foot, made some measurements, prepped the steel, and drilled a couple holes in the caster plates for plug welds. Not pretty, but plenty strong for the need. I measured and marked the spots for holes in each of the 4 mounts for the leveling feet. Drilled the holes all the way through, first a pilot, then full size. I cleaned off the drilling lubricant with acetone and prepped the surface to weld the leveling foot nut onto the mount. Unfortunately, I don't have footage of the welding, but you can see the result in this shot here. For whatever reason, I decided to weld the leveling foot mounts to the frame using stick welding. I think my concern was that perhaps MIG would not give enough penetration in the weld. The last time I tried stick welding, I was maybe 7. My dad was showing me how to do it. He was a great welder. I need to practice. Sorry for these welds, Dad. More cleanup grinding to try to hide the ugly welds. Then I mounted the casters to the mount plates using bolts and lock washers. I decided not to weld the casters in place in case I ever wanted to change them or get rid of them down the road for some reason. I designed the leveling feet so when fully retracted, they would allow the casters to roll freely. Then it only takes a few turns to raise the unit up off the casters completely. On the original design, I had the top lattice mount to the outside of the legs so everything would be flush. I made a battlefield decision to change that parameter so the lattice would sit on the top of the legs instead. That way the weight of the lathe is transferred directly down the length of the leg as opposed to relying on my welding skills to hold it all up. I think I bought this piece of C-channel on eBay. I got the idea to use C-channel from this old Tony's video, Fixed Gantry CNC Router Build. The first thing to do was to cut this beast down to size. This thing ate cutting discs for lunch, and sometimes even just as a snack. I went through several cutting discs on this thing, but ultimately the beast was tamed. Getting ready for paint now, I prepped the whole surface with a wire cut brush. I really want to get all that mill scale off the steel and give the primer a fighting chance to make good adhesion. I used Rust-Oleum 2X white primer. I did the equivalent of 2 medium coats, spraying on the first coat and working my way around. By the time I got back to where I started, the paint had flashed off, so I did a second coat. I also primed the underside of the C-channel before welding it in place. It was easier that way. Finally, I welded the C-channel to the lattice and put away the welder. I prepped and primed the C-channel and lattice. Once it was dry, I top-coated with Rust-Oleum hammered dark bronze. Finally, it was time to mount the bed. I positioned the bed where I wanted it, transfer punched and drilled out the mounting holes. I counterbored the holes to make sure there were no burrs. I don't have video of the leveling process, but I first leveled the cart as well as possible with the leveling feet. Then I installed the bed using steel shims for final leveling and to remove any twist from the bed. I went through many different iterations to mount the motor. In the end, I went very simple but effective. Using a couple more pieces of 2-inch square tube, I notched the bottoms so they would lock onto the lattice. The top is just a piece of 1/4-inch plate drilled for the motor mount. A drawback of this design is that the motor mount plate interferes with the full travel of the cross slide. But since the cutting tool can still make it past chuck center, it's not been enough of an issue to do anything about it. The stand is solid, rigid, square, and has a small footprint. Everything I need to make chips. It's been 7 years and that stand is as good as the day I finished it. I've been very happy with the design and the motor mount interference has yet to become a problem. If it ever does become an issue, I'll just modify it. If the video was entertaining, please strike a like and consider subscribing. Leave a comment with your thoughts. I always enjoy hearing from you. I should see if there are any more old hard drives laying around. Until next time, I'm mainejason. Get out there and give it a try.